Hello, everyone, and welcome now to week 14 of English 306 Business Writing. I hope you're all doing well, and managing to stay sane under these very peculiar times. I really enjoyed reading through the discussion board and the specific comments people made about the resumes. So most of what we're going to do today actually is I am just going to pull up those resumes, and I have put together everyone's comments, and I'm going to offer my insights on what I thought people really offered that was insightful and that was helpful. So this exercise of looking through these resumes and talking about the ideas that you presented, I think will be very helpful for you for this week's assignment, which is to write your own resume if you haven't written one already and submit it online. So basically we are wrapping up this semester. We don't have a whole lot. There's just this week and then next week. Right now, the only things you have left for this class are your draft of your resume and then your final resume. As a reminder, what you'll do is have your rough draft resume or CV if you'd like. You're going to have that done by Sunday. I'm going to look through each one, and I'm going to offer you individual comments on things that I think might be helpful for your resume, and then you'll turn that final one in, and that will be the end of the course. So not much left here. In terms of grading, I have caught up with everything except those resignation letters, the final one. My apologies for that. Just some busy things kind of came up, but I will have those done by Wednesday evening, so you can check that. So, why don't we just look real quickly at the syllabus? That might be a little unnecessary, but just to get us on the same page. Okay, you can see now that we are on week 14, April 6th through April 12th. This week it says on the syllabus discussion board post due, and then also says a final discussion board post due. We won't have any more discussion board posts, which is nice, I think. The only thing you'll be doing this week, it says peer review, resume, CV, essentially just by noon, April 12th, so Sunday, submit your rough draft. And then our final week right here, you'll just be turning in your final resume CV, and I'm going to give you until April 24th for that, so you'll have a little more time. Plus, that'll give me a little more time to read through everyone's resume and offer specific feedback. I think most people are aware of this, but I've been asked this question in the past. We do not have a final. I am just an unofficial final, like where you're tested, or basically I'm making your resume or CV the final. So, okay. Now, before we jump into those 4 resumes and analyze them together, there were some general comments people made that I thought were really good and really insightful, and I wanted to address. One of the things that was mentioned by a couple people was, if you noticed in these resumes, there weren't references, right? And there was some questions that were posed that I think are really good questions of, do you include your references on your resume? Here is my insight into it. It depends on the job you're applying to and what they ask for. So sometimes, in a job description when you're applying for it, they'll say, could you, give us your resume, maybe a cover letter, and 3 references, right? In that case, you could include those references on your resume, or it might actually be able to where you can just email those references to the administrator who's doing that, right? So sometimes there's other jobs that you'll be applying to. They will get your references through other ways. Some jobs, for example, also, it's, hey, we want your resume and we want 3 letters of recommendation. That happens with applying to graduate school and other things. So you'll have to ask people to actually, if they'll email letters of recommendation. In that case, I wouldn't put my references on my resume, because especially if you're doing one page, you're trying to stay in those confines, you want to save as much space as you possibly can. So I think it depends. I think if sometimes they don't even ask for references, and in that case, it might be good to include them on your resume, just so that you can show, hey, these are some people you can contact, right? So it depends. Great question, though. Another thing that this was brought up by some people, and I've had this before. People in my other classes have this problem or this struggle. Essentially, what if you're in a position where you're in school, but you don't feel like you have a lot of experience in terms of employment or those sorts of things? first off, I would push you to still do your best to create a resume. And sometimes if you dig into, okay, well, have I volunteered? What are positions I have had before? Is there anything in terms of school I've done? And it's okay if you have a basic resume. Everyone has to start somewhere. Sometimes things too is that um, there can be a lot of permission towards people that are still in their undergraduate degree to reference back stuff they may have done in high school. Now, as you get older and progress, right, you want to stay away from that. It's kind of like with me as well. I think my resume, my first one when I was in my undergrad, I referenced a few things I did in high school, but then as I got older and worked more, it's like those things in high school went off. And then after a while, right, as I got in the professional world, I kind of stopped listing things in my undergrad as well because that seemed like a distant past, and most of what I reference now are things that happened in the last few years and deal with graduate school. So do your best. If you need to reach back a little bit, that's okay. But yeah. And there was one final thing that was brought up about it. Oh, I remember now. Someone also brought up the idea of, do you have, when you're making descriptions of the work experience you have or those sorts of things, do you have a period at the end? Here's the thing. I have seen it both ways with professional resumes, so I am not going to count off if you do or don't. The only thing is to be consistent, right? So if you're not going to put periods at the end, don't put them in any of them. If you're going to, on each sentence, put it through. Yeah, I think maybe my guess is that it is discipline specific, and some people have it or kind of require it or think it's supposed to be there, and others don't. I've seen it both ways. My advice would be, when you actually are applying for a job, looking at other resumes of people that are in that field you're in and see what they do. So those are just some general questions. Now let's move into analyzing those resumes. Okay, I want to start with the resume that overall received the most praise, and I think for good reason. It was John's here. So, few things. One thing to consider first is, okay, what is being applied for? Now, in this particular resume, what was being applied for was a position in actuary science, which, if you know anything about that, it's a discipline which basically you apply math and statistics to assess risk in usually like insurance or finance corporations and other industries like that. So automatically it's like, wow, okay, this is a field that is very technical. There's going to be a lot that is done with math and statistics. And so, yeah, these specific exams right here, these are actually exams for actuary science. So it says, hey, I'm licensed with this exam. I have these skills. And then I'm going to obtain these exams and V's as well. The skills you'll notice, all very specific in terms of Excel. Well, Excel's kind of general, but advanced level, Microsoft Access, these are all really good things in terms of the specifics of skill sets. Also, fluent in Chinese, that is a huge plus, especially because so much business is done with China in these fields and just in general. Work experience, mostly I think this is really great right here. Someone pointed out, and I think this was a good point, that some of the verbs could be a bit more active. Yeah, like some of them kind of use passive voice. Well, used is a popular one that runs throughout, which if you have here and there, not bad, but try not to make it proliferate throughout your writing. Have a variety of words in that. Another thing that was mentioned, people brought attention to the U of L in the corner here, this logo. People were torn about this too, and I think that their feelings were really good about this. Some people said, wow, it was nice to have kind of some visual appeal. I agree. I actually like sort of, have a little bit of color on it and it doesn't seem to be doing too much. However, do you want your resume to be associated with your alma mater or the school you're going to? I could see some circumstances if you're applying for a position within a university itself, or you're applying at a place where there is a huge network of University of Louisville alum, could be a good idea. However, you do run a lot of risks in this, right? I mean, what if, I don't know, there's someone who's looking at this, like UK is their team or something else, and it kind of maybe even subconsciously rubs them the wrong way. So, I like it visually. I think there could be some circumstances where it could be beneficial, but probably you want to be careful with things like that. All right, now let's look at Marie, this resume right here. So I think that overall, this is actually a decent example for someone that maybe doesn't have a lot of experience, but has some really good experience, and it's pretty simple in terms of its design, but it's good. Yeah, for just a good basic resume. Some things that I would point out, you'll notice there's periods on the end, not a big deal, but it's inconsistent because there's not a period here. So, just remember consistency. Visually, there's a few things. I think it's pretty good. I it is a little strange to me how much this pops, like the green here and these things, but not a big deal. I guess it does add some color to it. A lot of all caps on these. I don't know that I would get things in all caps. If it was me, I would probably just have those, um, lowercase, except for the titles that needed it. Another thing that was mentioned is, yeah, this right here is actually 2 pages. Could be changed really easily by just spacing it in a way where that was deleted. Skills, pretty good here. Yeah, you'll notice with the skills though, no periods there, right? So there's the inconsistency. But overall, not a bad beginning resume. Pretty good active verbs, properly, ensure, direct. You'll notice in the current things, it's phrased currently. Right here, if you were talking about the past, you'd use past tense typically for that. So yeah. All right, now let's go to Morgan's. And something that was said by multiple people, actually almost everyone, was that there is something about this that is overwhelming visually. And yes, indeed, a lot is going on here. And it's kind of like compared to the other ones, you really have to focus in and read these things. And I do think there is some room where some of this could be cleaned up a little bit. I will say, however, that this particular position is applying for a science teacher position in secondary education. And specific to that field, a lot of times these resumes for teaching either elementary or junior high or high school or late college as well, there are a lot of people applying for these jobs. And they do tend to look this dense. And that's just kind of how it is. However, I fully agree with the comments people made, and I think that you want to avoid in other fields making yours this dense. However, that is kind of, from my understanding, how these often do look. I did actually, for just my own taste, like the border that was created with this because there was so much written that I felt like it was kind of contained. Someone pointed out that the email is basically the same size of the font as the name. I agree. I think that's like a little peculiar. Not a big deal, but I think that's a valid criticism. And, that maybe the name could be bigger or pop or something like that. If you notice, I thought actually really exceptional active verbs here. Adapted, engaged, utilized, organized, created, cultivated, provided, developed, strengthened, right? Like there's both a variety of these words of active verbs that I just think works really well. Talk about some professional development there. So yeah, I do think there's room for cleaning this up. I do think, however, given the specific position, this person did a good job. So, but I'm not expecting you to have yours this dense, unless you're going into a field or something that it would warrant that. All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to move pretty quickly through Andy's here. My thoughts overall, okay, not bad for a starting resume. Again, this seems like someone who is, yeah, just kind of has some basic good experience. One thing that was pointed out that I think was really good is, man, if we could have just condensed or made better spacing, this wouldn't be 2 pages. There's also only one thing there, right? So finding a way to clean up that would be good. Also, yeah, it's a little strange. This was also mentioned that education isn't first. I think it depends on what you're going to be doing, but yeah, most of the time education is first. Also, some mentioned that some of the experience is further back than 5 years. I think that's true. Be careful not digging back too far. However, if you do have to dig a bit to have those up there, I think it's okay. Some of the active verbs are right. Oversaw, collaborate, those are pretty good. Presented, designed, led. A little strange with member, right, on that right there. Also, one thing, it says obtain bachelor's degree in biology in 2018. This isn't the typical format. You don't want to make it a bullet point. You actually want to have it up here like the other ones do. Yeah, so it's okay, but could also visually, it's just kind of bland, but not bad. Okay, so for this week, you're going to need to upload your resume. What you'll do is go to assignments, you'll go to rough drafts, go to Resume, CV, Rough Draft, and upload it. Aside from that, have a wonderful week and let me know if you have any questions or concerns.